Hello and welcome to another episode of Grange TV. We're here with Justin Lang from Live Athletic in Caringbah. Justin, welcome. Thank you for coming out. I know you're very busy. Appreciate it very much. We have Dave Roberts, TAFE extraordinaire over there, and Eli Hedges in the background as always, just bringing up the garrison. Yeah, lurking in the background.
Through the window.
Lurking in the background, going back to the same reason he was charged so long ago.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Justin, how you been? What's been happening? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Mate, I've been well, thanks. It's been a busy start to the year. Obviously work as an exercise physiologist and run my own training program down in Caringbah, Live Athletic. And basically we train a lot of athletes at the gym and do a lot of sports injury rehab. So busy start to the year with plenty of athletes competing in some major tournaments this year. So it's been an exciting start to the year, and the gym's been busy and enjoying it.
Justin, I know you quite well and known you for a very long time, and I always kind of give you a little bit of stick about it, but genuinely interested. I know you're a Queenslander originally.
Yep.
And your father is John Lang.
Yep.
For years, I just referred to him as John Lang's son. But then I realised...
He reckons I'm the most famous one in the family now.
Well, then I realised John Lang has another son, and people didn't know who I was talking about with Justin. And you're Martin Lang's brother.
That's correct, yeah.
And you also have a sister.
Yep.
But all jokes aside, like, you come from a big pedigree of rugby league and sporting background, and they are icons of Australian sport. Can you tell us what it's like, what that background was like? Did you... and I know I'll give you stick about growing up in your brother's shadow. Did you ever feel like that? Did you feel like that? Was it hard? Was that hard? Did that put pressure on you?
No, I mean, growing up, I remember Dad's always been, said to us from a very young age, he, always said, he didn't expect us to play sport because he played sport. He didn't expect me to play rugby league. He actually, when I was younger, used to throw up, options of playing basketball and that type of thing. I think he really, took the pressure off there. But, growing up, I did want to play. I played rugby league up into the under 19s. It was back then, Jersey Flag, and I played a couple of years of that. And I probably, I was okay, but I didn't think I was going to go on and play at any elite level. But I wanted to. I think having my dad played for Queensland and Australia in rugby league, and my brother played for Queensland, and they both won premierships together for Penrith in 2003. I grew up wanting to be a professional footballer, but I don't know if that was my calling. I definitely wanted to be really good at something, and I probably feel as though later on in life, it took me a while, but I've sort of found it. Working as a coach, like a strength conditioning coach. Now I'm an exercise physiologist. I did sports science at uni, and my training now is as an exercise physiologist. But that's enabled me to finally, I guess, I wanted to be really good at something, and I've worked hard over the past, from I've been training people since I was about 16, and to sort of like I said, be good at something. And at rugby league and being an athlete probably, wasn't my thing. But I think the coaching is in the genes somewhere. My sister's a clinical psychologist. Dad's coached in NRL for 15 years, I think it was. And
your brother's coaching now too, isn't he?
He was doing strength conditioning coaching with the Gold Coast Titans. He's actually not anymore. He's actually got a really good job working as in the medical devices industry. He lives in Queensland now, so... he probably didn't pursue the coaching so much. He worked as a personal trainer.
But by any other standards, being the strength and conditioning coach for first grade rugby league team is probably the highest point that a lot of people will ever achieve. Most people won't even achieve that.
No, you're right. So he worked as an assistant there.
Can we look up Martin Lang's highlights?
Yep.
If that's possible. No, because
see if you can find the chase on Rod Wishart in the state of origin.
Because one of the things that the background of that, is your dad was like a really tough dude. He was a hooker for Australia.
Yep.
And your brother's one of the toughest dudes to play Origin.
Yeah.
And you're exercise physiologist. But a good one.
Straw, you reckon? Yeah, no. So I mean, yeah, like Dad played. He was a hooker. So it's interesting that Dad's side of the family is a bit shorter. So Dad was a hooker. He was like shorter, sort of nuggety build. And he was, I think, just he made his mark as a as a tough Queensland hooker. Just used to scoot from dummy half. He had good speed, and he worked hard, and he went on to play for Australia. And but my brother, I ended up playing in the front row. So my mum's side of the family is a little bit taller and sort of slimmer. I think my brother got mum's side's height and Dad's thickness, and I just got the height. So not so good for playing rugby league.
What was that like, and what kind of influence? Because I've met your father numerous times, and your family's is a great family, and what kind of influence was your father, you think, on your coaching and just as a man?
Oh man, I mean, just some flashbacks as you're asking me that question. I think my dad was never fancied himself or sort of as a real technician of the game, but he had a deep understanding of rugby league, and I think his coaching style was in getting the best out of his players.
Was he more of a tactician, or a people manager?
No, he's a people manager. Like I said, he's not going to be the one, and he sort of, he speaks about this now, like ever teaching somebody to pass the ball. But he certainly, he's a people manager, and he just had a good way of. He kept it real with his players. I know, like he would often get compliments from his players just for being honest and telling it how it is. And he had was based his principles on just treating people with respect. He expected to be treated with respect in return. And he got a strong personality. My dad, he could handle the players well. And on top of that, I think tactically, he knows. In rugby league, he knows, what's required to win games of football. And obviously you can get assistant coaches in to teach the technical side of it, but he's certainly got that sort of vision of what was required. And probably the reason why he lasted so long in the NRL. And I think, I remember going into the last cup, he coached for 2 years at South at the end of his career. I think going into those 2 years, and I think he had a win-loss of about 50% there. But I think going into that, he was like sitting on about a 56% win-loss record. And I mean, to be in the NRL for like 13, 14 years at that time, and have that, like that was, I think it was like the third or fourth best record of any coach that had coached over 50 games of first grade. So I mean, he, I guess the criticism that he may have got, like going through, he's always seen as a bit of an old-fashioned coach. But interestingly, we often spoke about old-fashioned, but I think he's almost at the cutting edge because he never got in. He never sort of got caught up in the latest trend that probably comes around and it's not the thing that makes the difference. He just he was a critical thinker, and I really probably honed my own style of coaching. On the way sort of he coached throughout his NRL career.
Is those highlights ready?
We've got the Rod Stewart chase down. Is that the one that you wanted?
Rod Wishart. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, Rod Wishart chase down. This is him in his younger years.
Can we see it?
Turn around. Yep.
Can we see it, Dave?
Yeah. Yep.
Can I see it?
We'll see it, please.
Rubbing kick. Wishart.
And this is him playing in the front row, your brother.
Yeah,
so
he came on. Yeah, and he cuts him off, and then Matt Singh comes up on the outside and makes the tackle.
Is there some of Martin Lang's big hits that he's famous for?
Yeah, maybe. You'll certainly see some of his hard straight running.
Yeah, so maybe if we can see some of those too.
But just off that, we were talking to Anthony and actually Cody around that 10% effort. Like, for a front rower to do that chase on a very fast player, like Wishart was a speed machine.
Yeah.
That 10% inspires the other players. Like, I think that's something that Cody Walker was saying, that
Absolutely.
as the general viewer, you don't see that, but it actually changes the whole morale of the team. So I think just in that footage, you actually saw the true essence of him as a player.
Yeah, look, I think, Martin did, all his talking through his actions. He used to run the ball hard. He would cop it on the field, and he'd lead the charge. And I think, he was in a lot of his teams that my brother played in, had good success. I mean, most sports are built on a foundation, and my brother used to provide that foundation of someone that would just run straight and hard. I mean, you use the analogy of someone fighting. I mean, you just can't go in and use all your weapons all the time. You got to set it up. And I think, through the way he played, that was his role in the team. I never forget, my brother had a thing. So growing up, he was not, he didn't make any rep sides growing up. And I know that he had this thing where around sort of 18, 19, 20, we moved down to Sydney, and he wasn't really doing anything with his, in his career outside of football. And he just had it in his mind that he was going to play first grade. And then I remember speaking to him, and he said, this was actually before his debut. I was sitting on the bench next to him because my dad was coaching the team at the time, and for the Sharks. And my brother made his debut at the Sydney Football Stadium. He turned to me and said, if I just run hard and make my tackles, I've got to go okay, don't I? I said, yeah, you do. That's all you have to do. And he went on there, and he built his career around doing a job.
Can I just say something on that? One of the things that's fantastic with that is people get lost. And I was always been a fan of Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan wasn't known as a epic rebounder in basketball. He was known as a prolific scorer, great defender, all of that. But one of the things he said was, because I said to him, how do you consistently average, over 30 points a game over however many years? And he goes, because I go out there and do the basic things right, and he doesn't go out there and push to score 30 points, as the points are going to come. And if he's having a bad game, he goes, and I'm paraphrasing him again, but he would just go and say, I've got to get 4 rebounds in this quarter. And he goes, anyone can rebound, no matter how bad you're having, how bad the day it is that you're having.
Yeah.
And it's one of the fundamental building blocks in basketball is to be able to get rebounds, because otherwise you don't get the ball.
Yeah. And
I look at the people that are successful, not just in football or basketball, but in corporate world of work. It's say for example, I've got to make 20 calls. I'm going to go out and make the 20 calls, or I'm going to go out and get 10 tackles because in the first however many minutes, and your brother obviously had that mentality.
Yeah, he did. And I remember he used to go out there and he used to try to get at least a hit up every set. And they used to do the meters per run statistic, and he was fanatical about making his meters. And if you spoke about it before, if he's got it in his head made up that he needs to achieve a certain meters per hit up, that it's almost not coachable. That's up to the player whether he gives that extra effort and wants to do that. For my brother, that was going to be the thing that so he built himself up over a period of time physically to that's another bit of a sports science experiment where he never had this natural ability for playing rugby league, and he just said, hey, if I become 108 kilos and if I run the ball as hard as I can every time and I make my tackles, there has to be a position for me within a team. And he went on and represented Queensland.
But there has to have been some, because if I tried that experiment, I'd be being fed through a tube.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If I said I'm going to get to 108 kilos and that, I don't see me. Your brother was obviously special, because when you'd see him, to be able to sustain, I think physically and mentally. I know what you're saying, but I think the credit that I'm trying to give him is I don't think people understand when you, especially being someone like him, coming out into Origin and knowing that you're going to run straight into the New South Wales pack. Have we got footage of that?
If you just see Martin Lang hit ups or something like that, there'll be plenty. You know, like he. No, you're right, Fab. Look, and it's something that we spoke about.
I would be scared.
Yeah, when we speak about talent, we often sort of, I think we think of the physical talents, like sidestepping somebody, but there's an element of what you're born with to be able to, like psychological talent. Like, he's a special guy where he was able to, do that week in, week out. And the NRL wears guys down. It does. That style of play that he played, it would be very easy to get, worn down. I remember, one night when he was playing for the Panthers, he had the flu really bad, and he had to go in and get some. Like, he was having trouble breathing before the game, and I remember thinking, hardly most players would have pulled out of that.
I wouldn't go to work. I wouldn't have gone to work. I have the flu. I'm not going to work.
Yeah, but I mean that's the special type of person that he was. I mean, where I just think he prided himself on, playing every weekend. Another one where he was just paranoid about not dropping the ball. He just saw that as a complete, it probably kills ball security in rugby league. I reckon you'd be hard pressed to find my brother dropping the ball more than, I don't know, over his career. Like 5 or 6 times throughout his career, because he was, that was part of his identity as a player, was just to, not make mistakes. And he'd go out there and he'd physically grip the ball tight. He just had that mentality, through, but that was on the field. But if you dig underneath that, and you look, he was the first person. He used to get to training before the other players got there in the morning, get his weight sessions done, when there was less fuss in the gym. And, he used to sleep during the day for recovery. We often joke about recovery strategies.
Oh, we will get to that.
Yeah, I know. He'd go home, he'd have tuna and rice at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then he would do what he had to do. He would sleep for his growth, just because obviously the body grows when you're sleeping. So, he was very fanatical, and it was just a process for him, and he was able to have a successful career on that.
When we're talking about that, I see, we got one of the guys that trains with us. His name's David Francis. He just tore his AC. Is
that what he did? I saw that.
Just training now recently. But they're guys that you're never gonna hear about him. You probably will hear about him, but you won't. I've seen, and I won't even talk about which fight it was, because it's unfair to the opponent and it's unfair to David. But I've been out the back with him where I thought, man, we should pull you from this fight. The guy's on whatever the equivalent of Sudafed is. Codrils, and he's got a temperature, and he's sick, and he's sniffling, and the concept of pulling out of the fight, it's it's not going to happen. And he ended up losing a split decision against a very, very good opponent, who would have given him. I don't want to take away from his opponent. I'm not even going to mention who they were, because I don't know, the opponent might have been sick too. Because he was a super tough dude. But to see that mentality and to see it firsthand is something that people really don't appreciate, what it's like to get in there and have a fist fight with someone, no matter what it's like to run into a forward pack of the best NRL players in the country. When you're at your best, what that would take, and then to be sick and do that, or injured and you're carrying injuries, and then you see it other people that are I've got to go and do whatever it is that I've got to do, and they'll go and do it regardless of whether they're sick or dead or whatever. Did we have the highlight?
The only thing that's coming up is a fight between Cronulla Sharks and Western Suburbs.
So there's nothing on the internet.
There's the greatest of all time. We're just having trouble queuing it up. The greatest hit-ups of all time, and he's listed as one of those.
There'd be a few in there anyway, so you'll see that. But but I think you're right, Fab, there. There is... I think there's as I do more coaching and progress on, I always get suckered in you're looking for the really talented one, but you sort of think you only need, in any industry, you only need enough talent to be successful. And the more I see it, I probably think the more I question how much actually talent do you really need? I mean, because my brother's a testament to that. Like I think it's...
Yeah, but if you're not built a certain way, I don't think you could sustain the amount of damage your brother.
No,
would
they
have
can't.
taken.
But there's lots of people built like my brother
Absolutely.
who could sustain the amount, but they don't have his personality,
100%.
which is and that.
But is that part of being talented too?
And I 100% it is,
Yeah.
and people override that. They just think of the physical talents, but there's that. I mean, the psychology of of what you're born with to be able to.
And then the pedigree of having your father and your mother around. Like, I think, because I've met both your parents.
Yep.
And, they just seem like good, honest, hardworking people that provide a very nurturing environment for people like both you and your brother and your sister to proliferate, because your sister's extremely successful as well. Like,
Yeah, she's got she's a doctor of clinical psychology, so she is. And I think, look, I mean, certainly, you look at sometimes, the stories of other people and what they require, and you look back and think, shit, almost like, we were very blessed. Like, we got brought up, our parents loved us, they gave us opportunity. Even, Dad giving me the opportunity to go, like, my dad paid for me to go through university. There's no HECS debt for me. So I feel very fortunate for that. And yeah, I mean, like, if I he encouraged me to go to university and said, like, if you want to work with athletes, I think it's something that you should look at doing, because I didn't get a great mark at school at all, but
you did very well at university, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I went there as a mature age student, and I was there in the front row telling everybody else to shut up because I wanted to learn,
But you got a certain award at university.
Yeah, I got awarded Dean's Medal for, I basically, I think because I was finished in the top 2% of students in health sciences, but I got an average mark of 86% at uni. So my mentality was, I was that scared of failing uni. I went there and I actually rang Dad on my first day. Like, I was very dependent upon my dad, like, all through my 20s. And I remember uni just freaked me out. I didn't know the difference between a tutorial and a lecture. I got an average mark. I was okay. Like, I did okay academically up until year 11, when you actually have to start studying. and then I sort of fell away. I was going good till year 10. But then, so I had no confidence that I could get through uni. I'd seen my sister do about 8 years of uni, I think, by the time I started. And I remember seeing how hard she worked, and she had to work hard as well. She wasn't naturally super intelligent. She had to work hard for it. And I remember my dad helped my sister with assignments, and I used to frustrate Megan that sort of Dad had already worked out the answer from his practicalities in coaching, the psychology of things, where he got those things from the lie of the land. He didn't study it at school or anything like that, although he is well read. But yeah, I mean, I went to uni and I called him after the first day, and I was lost. And it wasn't even a big University of Western Sydney. It wasn't even a big university.
We did the same degree.
Yeah, okay.
What
mark did you get?
I'm surprised they let me stay. Like, I'm surprised they let me stay. Now I was a horrible student all through. Like, I was like a terrible student up until. No, I was a good student up until probably about year 9. And then I never picked it back up.
we went reverse.
I was never good at uni and that. Like, I was always more like how you're saying with your dad, more like in that vein of person, like that. I would get through and I'd do the assessment and I'd hope that what I wrote in the essay somehow would get mapped back to thing.
I mean, I was like, but just on that, like, I mean, it's funny how people are motivated by fear of failure. Like, so I rang my dad that first day and he said, mate, just get through the first day. Like, I wanted to come home. I said, Dad, I don't know where I'm going. I said, I'm lost. I've rocked up late to class. And blah, blah. He said, mate, just get through the first day. And if you want to not go back after that, he said, that's fine, but let's just get home. We'll talk about it in the night. And I got through my first day and then I, but after that, like in that first week, I went on and then, I remember like had to write essays. So I went and did all the free courses at the library about like looking up databases and all that sort of stuff, because I was just in me, I was so scared of failing that I just went the other way. And like when we got our university assignments, I would go and hire out the recommended reading books. Like straight away, I'd go straight to the library. And I remember I met one of my lecturers there, and she goes, "Well, haven't really even set the she hadn't even like set the assignment yet." And I was hiring out the books that she was going to go and get to look through, because they were on the recommended reading list.
When we do stuff like the GAP program now, and you think about like the uni students, and because a lot of these people are coming from places like Lake Cargellico or wherever that has not many people, or shout out to Lake Cargellico, you get your shout out, only one ever. But
to the one person.
To the one person from there. But no, but like they're coming from these areas, and you're talking to people, and they the fears that they have of failing and everything is exactly what you're talking about.
But they didn't probably,
No. But when they see you, they would never think that you do. They would never ever think 100%. That you feel that stuff. They would never think that just, you know what I mean? That this guy would feel fears or whatever, or like say, or you look at Rob now and and he still does. Like he might, or anyone else, or David or Eli or whatever, and they don't understand that we all feel that stuff. And I was talking to someone about it today. Like the perspective is different.
Yeah.
Say for example, so the perspective is different in that. You look at it and you go, well, Justin, you've got your dad, and your dad's an ex-NRL player, and he's paying for your HECS, and you don't have all that stuff. That's a perspective, but they don't understand that the emotional response, the fear, is exactly the same.
It's exactly the same.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's something that I think is really missed with people.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting thing. I just wanted to bring that up, in that all that stuff that you're feeling is what probably people feel, Dave, when they come to TAFE or to do a course or to do something that like
the funniest fear about education is people think they need to know stuff before they go to class, and I think that's where the anxiety comes from, like getting to all the books, where I deal with a lot of students who are afraid of study because they don't know what they're going to learn. But that's the gold, isn't it? You go on there to learn that.
Yeah, but I think our system, and I'm not one of those people, this is our system, but I think our system, from when you're young, you're tested on what you don't know. Yeah. You know what I mean? From when you're very little, it's like, what don't you know? And then like, and even ever since you're young, like I always felt like you're being tested on this much, and you're like, but I know so much more. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I don't know my times tables, but I know so much more.
Where can I use this in life?
But there's things like I could like. I repeated kindergarten, so I can't even say I could colour in a sheep. But you know what I mean? Like there's so much stuff. You're being tested for something so small, and then when you're out in the workplace, it's so broad.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just a great point you made there about thinking you need to know stuff before you went to uni, or say before you get to education. Because leading up to that, I actually started, because you're meant to have a prior learning. You're meant to have done chemistry at so I went and hired out from the local library before I even went to uni a freaking chemistry book, and I just started from page 1 and started working my way through. And I mean that was probably a little bit of a waste. I didn't really have to do that. But on top of
I know for sure you didn't have to, because I did it.
Yeah.
And I still don't know. I can barely spell chemistry.
No, and then I also bought a book. So before I'd gone and started like Anatomy 1, where you got to know the muscles and the origin insertions. I bought a book before I went, and I knew all the major muscles, like all the muscles, and I memorized it before I went to uni. I mean, and there's probably something in me where I don't, which maybe helps me, I guess, maybe to have, achieved good success in coaching, that, I mean, I don't want to get things wrong. Like I'm always evaluating my program. I hate to think that I'm doing, like I'm implementing something in someone's program and I could be getting it wrong. And if I'm like going through research and something's brought to my attention, I'm like, how didn't I know that? Okay, so I I think.
But
there's
you're not
something-
meant to know everything.
I know, but I think, as a bit of a, and I think it's probably why I'm working for myself. I probably don't like criticism a whole lot, and because I want to try to, be good at what I do. Now, you're not meant, you can't know everything. That's. I'm glad you said that.
Going back to the criticism thing, you say you don't like to hear the criticism. I think a lot of that, I think people get that word really, really wrong, because I think when people go, no, I'm giving you constructive criticism or whatever, and sometimes I think why don't you just shut up and just let me do my thing, and then if I'm not, don't get me wrong, if I'm, I don't know, skateboarding on the freeway, then yeah, all right, I need to hear constructive criticism.
Yeah.
But I think say we're doing this podcast and straight away people will say, oh, you know what it was, Justin was leaning back a little bit and the panels, they weren't lined up, and I think, don't worry, the next time we'll fix it. It's okay. And I don't think it's we also think associate criticism and the whole thing is done that you're marked and you're graded from such an early age that people feel that they're allowed to give their opinion. They're allowed to mark you, give you a mark on whether this podcast, this conversation deserves a distinction or not. And I think, how about you just don't listen to it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How about you just let us be? We're having a conversation, and it is what it is. And it's not, you don't have to get it right every single time. You don't need to get a mark. You don't need to get graded. Life isn't like that. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to do stupid stuff. You're going to have to, and those mistakes are probably going to help you to make the right decision when it counts, hopefully.
Yeah, it's the great thing about, I guess, then leaving uni and getting out in the real world is that you're right. You're not marked like that. And I mean, you sort of get to go out and execute your applied knowledge. And yeah, I mean, I'm glad I got through. And like I said, I just, right up to the last, I probably got a bit confident that I was going to pass things by about the last semester of the last year. I started to get a bit cruisy in terms of not leaving the study to the last minute. But I mean, that's pretty much they reckon with motivation, people are motivated to avoid pain and achieve pleasure. That's motivation sort of driven by that. And, I was certainly
and probably avoiding pain is bigger than achieving pleasure.
Well, yeah. I mean, they talk about that with, someone's got, why would someone say who's got a chronic disease or illness? It might be to do with food. It might be say that there's a great book called Weight Loss for Food Lovers. It's written by a psychologist in Brisbane, and that's this concept that I just spoke about then. That's actually where I got it from. And he would say, okay, well, if someone might have their diabetes really progressed, but they still go and eat that sugary food, but the sense is that the pain is that they could die from their diabetes, but there's pleasure in that they know they're about to eat something that's very pleasurable, and the key to it is immediacy. So if that pain was going to be immediate, that they ate that cake, they were going to die the next day. They'd be motivated not to eat it, but there's no immediacy there. So that but what there is, there's immediacy that hey, they're going to taste pleasure through food. And it's understanding that role, that psychology behind human behaviour. So it's an interesting concept about how our behaviours are driven, and I certainly like reading that about that concept for food. Every time I speak about uni and I reflect on it, I'm sort of like that is what drove me, to, I guess, get those good marks at uni, was just to avoid failing. I just had this thing in my head that I was going to fail.
One of the things is when you said the term execution of applied knowledge.
Yep.
I think it's a really brilliant term. I don't know if you coined it yourself, but from now on we'll quote him. But I honestly think that that's such an important thing to say, because one thing is the marks you get at uni, and then can you apply that? And I was talking with my accountant actually about it, and he's a very, very good accountant. And we're talking about the execution of applied knowledge, and he's talking about how he's had fallouts with people that he went to uni with, because he did okay at university. He wasn't brilliant, but he's brilliant on the field, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like when he's out there, he's had a great career as an accountant. And then, he went on to do other things post-grad, Like, he did very well postgraduate university, but I think undergraduate he was just normal. You know what I mean? And he had kind of fallouts with people because he went on to do great things in his career, and they didn't, but they got so much better marks than him. And it's, so what? You know what I mean? You've got to be able to apply that knowledge. And I see that as well in coaching, where people were great players or great athletes, and then they want to go and coach, and they can't marry up the two things, and they can't apply that knowledge in the coaching realm.
Yeah,
So
look, I mean,
interesting.
no, I mean, you're spot on. And, like, you know, Fab, look, if you look at, you know, we spoke about the other day, we're the same age, turning 38 this year. Like, I personally, I started coaching my mates. You know, I remember one of my mates in the neighbourhood, you know, Matt Hilder, he played for the Sharks and played for Newcastle and played a lot of first grade. His little sister was, you know, probably would have been 14, 15 at the time, and I was probably like about 18. And she, you know, I started just coaching people. I started off just coaching people for nothing for a long time. I just wanted to, like, looking back, I don't even know what I was thinking. I always had this thing in my head that hey, you can be better if you got faster. So, like, with her, I didn't really know. I worked with, my dad had a sprint coach that worked with him for his whole career, Peter Hadfield. He was Australian decathlon champion. And I sort of learnt about sprinting from him. But at the time, I was 18 years old, just coaching, you know, my mate's little sister. And then I picked up a few boys who, you know, had some talent. And I don't know, it's just, you know, so I probably, you know, from a young age was, you know, brought up around a football club. So that, like, I was getting that, like a kid that's brought up on the farm, you know. I mean, you know, Alex Prates, his little son, Rookie's going to be brought up around a gym, you know, like, it's going to be that applied. You start learning and watching and all that. And, I mean, certainly people are coming out of university every year with this degree, say, and in health professions like exercise physiologists, physio, chiro, whatever, I mean, they hold a lot of weight in society. But, I mean, if you don't have
applied,
the experience, I mean, it can just be, I mean, the two go hand in hand, and certainly that's one of the issues with education is that, hey, you know, and you go and do these work placements and stuff like that. But, I mean, I sort of feel like I've been doing a work placement since I was 14 years old. And you compare that. So how can you be a football player that gets into coaching? How can you actually possibly be good at coaching if you've never coached before? Like, so I've been coaching, say since I was 20, I've been coaching, that's like for 18, coming to my 18th year at 38, versus a footballer that finishes at 34 and goes, I'm going to coach. It's like, well, you're day one. I mean, just that critical thinking.
It isn't to say that they don't have their own skills that they bring into it.
100%.
And that they don't have rapport with the players, and that, and this is one of the things.
But that's not coaching.
That's what I was going to say. They have rapport with the players, and they'll say, well, how do you know, if you've never played in a grand final, how do you know what the players are feeling? And I said, granted, all of those things are true, right? But you're mixing arguments. That's not the same thing. Like, that's
you can get somebody in to speak to the players who have been in the grand final.
Yeah, like they're all different things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
That's all different things. And that isn't to say that this person isn't bringing all these skill sets as part of their applied knowledge, and that in the future they're not going to be great coaches because of these skill sets. But day one of coaching is still day one of coaching. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a very different thing. And there's things that you can do. Like, say, for example, I don't know, any good athlete, like, say, you can take Cass, for example.
Yeah.
There's stuff that she can do, but she can do it because she's Cass.
Exactly right.
Not because of some, like, you know what I mean, amazing thing that she has. She can just she's born with that ability, you know, for sure. And, you know, just on coaching, you talk about, like, needing to have played first grade to, say, coach a first grade football team, and those things are being challenged. Now, there's coaches that come through that have played very little first grade and are highly successful, but I always just think, and it's just my own thought, I always think you don't have to have been a racehorse to train a racehorse. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, 100% true.
So, like, I mean, humans, you know, are able to, you know, develop a deep understanding of you know, and they've never.
You were never a horse.
You're never a horse, and you've never galloped on a track. You know, so I mean, yeah, it's one of those. I mean, it's still out there though, isn't it? That people still, like, they finish their career, and it's like, get get the UFC fighter that was world champion to coach the young up-and-comer coming through. It'll be a good... It's still there.
I think there's a lot, like, say, for example, nobody... Like, I look at, say, for example, the relationship we have with Rob, right? I'm not a fighter. I'm a TAFE teacher. I do some of the coaching for him. Alex fought, you know? Then you have, like, Stu McKinnon. And Justin Fitzgerald fought, like a few times as an amateur. You don't fight. I don't fight.
I had one jiu-jitsu competition. So
let's never talk about that again. But then you have a guy like Stu McKinnon, who between he and his brother have had 10 million fights, and so Rob's able to relate with them at a totally different level than I ever would, because they've been in there with him. They've won fights, lost fights, all of that stuff, and that's cool. And I'm secure enough to understand that. I'm not a fighter, so I'm good with that. But my skills lie in, as a TAFE teacher and everything else that I've done, and as a coach, is to understand what the skill gaps are that are in Rob's behaviours necessarily. So it might be, I don't know, that whatever, thing X, you know, and create the scaffolding to provide the educational pathways to close those gaps, which is what my role is. So, and I don't think Stu McKinnon spends a lot of time necessarily thinking of that, because he's very smart, very intelligent, and he's a fighter, like 100%, something I will never ever be, you know.
Yeah.
And Stu and Rob relate on a totally different level. But then Rob and I relate on a totally different level.
Again.
And Alex and Rob relate on a different level. You and Rob relate probably closer to how Rob and I relate.
But Fab, you said, that's the term you've coined, and I've been using it a lot, is that skill gap development. And
that's from TAFE. I didn't coin it. Now it's out there. I've been telling everyone that I made it up.
That doesn't sound as good when you say it's from TAFE.
It's definitely from TAFE.
No, but I think that that is the art to coaching. What's been good about being involved with as Robert Whittaker's trainer is that I've even before I knew you and started working with Rob. I guess what we do in my program is, we have a very similar philosophy for coaching people, is identifying these skill gaps and then implementing programs and putting strategic structures in place, to basically, fix those skill gaps. I think of, what you have to do with Rob and think, imagine how many, there's so many different martial arts. There's so many elite people at doing martial arts, and there's any one of those guys out there could come in and say, hey, have you shown Rob this? Have you shown Rob that? And it's the same coaching, there's so much you could apply to an athlete, but what is critical is being able to filter through all of that and select what Rob needs to know for him to fight better. And hats off. And what's been good about the association with our team is that it's helped probably, confirm my philosophies on training, and to say, okay, I'm now involved with a world champion, and the guy that coordinates that world champions program is doing a very similar philosophy to what I believe in. So for me personally as a coach, I've learnt just a lot from saying, hey, what I'm doing, I'm on the right track with this. And, because until I guess, you train that, you're involved with a world champion, it's like, well, people can sort of say, well, but who have you trained? It's sort of like, well, But
in fairness, you've trained a whole host of people way before.
100%. And I've, trained a lot of sort of, national level athletes and international level athletes across, a broad range of sports. But, Rob is one of these ones now that he's he's undisputed middleweight world champion. And in a division, this is another interesting one, Fabi. I was thinking about driving in, as talking about, my dad said about coaching. When I coached this rugby sevens team last year, we won a lot. And it was the fact that I was strategic and that I picked these girls who are very athletic, and I taught them the basics of what they needed to do to run around on a sevens field and play. And I remember chatting to Dad about, like winning, and he said, Justin, the only way a coach can win consistently, have a high win-loss record, is if you're basically in a competition that, it's an unfair competition. You've got better players than everybody else. And, so in the NRL, it's hard to win consistently because it's a very fair competition. So if you've got a win-loss record of 90% and you've been coaching for 5 years, there mustn't be very many other good competitors there.
Yeah, that's like you're coaching Minto Cobras Division 4 and you just stacked it with SC ball players.
Yeah.
No offense, Eli.
Yeah, exactly. So and then you're going to sort of base your coaching. So the fact that I was well aware of that last year. I just did the things strategically to have a side that could win consistently, but it wasn't. It took it wasn't a fair play field.
Your end result is to develop those players, is not to just win a local comp.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
But where I'm alluding to with this, Fab, is that with you, the job. I'm not on here to pat you to give you heaps of raps, but like the reality is, you run a high performance program. It's a legitimate, and just for the viewers out there, if you get an opportunity to observe, what Rob's doing in his program, like it might not look anything fancy, but Rob is in a division where I know nothing about fighting, but he's in a division where you guys say it. It's a stacked division, and every fight's almost 50-50.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, and you're implementing a process that is enabling him to keep winning, and that's through a very rigorous training program. And I think, that's, so, if you want to judge a program, I sort of feel like, well, you've got to judge it in context of, hey, it's a, every fight's 50-50. And I always said, we're chatting to my athletes in my program, I'll say it to them. I said, I think, just from what I understand about athletic development, that, Rob's the type of guy that, maybe if he's left to his own devices, he's got that much talent maybe that, he could be top 15. And I on our Facebook page, I put down, I said, but guys, so he's top 15, I think, without the program that Fab and all his coaches implement. But with Fab's program, he's the world champion. And I think that, and he's just come off, whatever, 8 fights straight. And, that's coaching. That's coaching.
But just to add on to that, there's so many good coaches that he's had. It's and I appreciate the thing, but there's been so many coaches that he's had, very, very good ones, and so many coaches that he has. I just kind of balance.
Pull it all together.
Yeah, to a certain degree, but the big thing is, it's easy to look like a good driver if you're driving a Mercedes. You know what I mean? So Rob is super talented. The big thing as well.
Easy to mess it up too.
Huh? Yeah, 100%. You can drive it into a pole. That's for sure. The big thing with Rob is, when people talk about the win streak or even talk about the belt, right now, it looks like he's probably going to fight Romero in. Romero's talking about fighting in Miami or something like that, and we want the fight to be in Chicago. We'd prefer the fight to be at Narellan Town Centre, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they're not doing UFC Narellan anytime soon. So we said, no, it's in June. To be honest with you, Rob doesn't care about he cares about the belt because of the monetary things, but he wants to fight the best guys, and he wants to fight wherever against the best guys. The thing that makes Rob very, very special is the win streak, the belt, the lights, all of that stuff. It doesn't matter. He wants to fight the best guys. And I look at people like that and I think, man, that's full on, because
no, you didn't pick your way through.
and to do that as well, you have to. It requires something that I've always thought was his greatest strength. He's not perfect. He's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But his greatest strength for me, and it's something that, again, you can transfer it to any relationship, any business thing, is the ability to look in the mirror. You can hold a mirror up to Rob and go, mate, if you want to do this, these are the things, this is you. These are the things where you're falling short. These are your strengths. And the ability to look your own self in the mirror and go, shit, I'm falling short, or I've done these things that are wrong or bad or whatever, and I've got to deal with it. A lot of people package that in a little box and throw it off Sydney Harbour and go, let's never open that little box again. Whereas I'm sure he does that as well to a certain extent. I do that as well. There's some stuff floating in the bottom of Harbour, never coming back up. But in general, you can't push through to those upper echelons without addressing these things, because those things pop up later. If there's something that stops you from working hard and you don't address that, and this is being very general, and you don't address it, you might block it out and work hard, but you're going to get to another level where it's going to require you to push again. And to win a fight in the UFC, you need to have done that at some stage. But to go all the way through and win the world title, you have to have exercised some demons, man. And I'm only speaking from Rob's perspective. The strength of character and the ability to get through those things is hard, and not a lot of people can do it. I don't think a lot of people can do it even in just, day-to-day life, to stop, right? Just even to stop and look at your own self and go, why do I, even if you can't see it, none of you might be able to see it, but somebody might do something or say something and it'll elicit a response in me that I'm like, why do I react like that, even internally, to what that person did or said? Why do I feel like that? Not a lot of people can do that.
No, they can't. In fact, my dad used to call it, he'd say, someone needs to have a do not kid yourself day. Yeah. Stop kidding yourself and sit down. And the thing is, yes, some people can have that do not kid yourself day on their own, but I'm sure you've had a few of those days with Rob as his coach, is that you present him with these things. Say, hey, Rob, if you want to be world champion, if you want to maximize your potential as a fighter, which is what we always speak about. At me as a coach, someone else can have your coaching, and do all the right things, have all the do not kid yourself days, and they may never become world champion. But so we focus on, it makes sense to focus on just becoming the best that you can be. And that might mean winning one fight in the UFC, or it might mean winning an extra 5 fights because you do all the right things. But I think, sure, there's other people you work with that you have that conversation, I think the point you're making, and they don't change it.
Yeah, or they don't have it in a public forum. And I think Rob has to, what's hard for him being an individual sport, but I see with the football players that we work with and whatnot, his mistakes are in a public forum, and his triumphs are in a public forum, and people give their feedback and going back to that criticism or whatever. And there have been losses that were instrumental to his success. And I said it to him when he was on the podcast. I said to him, the fight that I thought when I was watching him was such a big turning point was when he fought Stephen Thompson, which he lost. And the way he fought, and you can say I know personally Rob, whatever, but Stephen Thompson is a killer at the best of times, and I don't see a lot of people going out there fighting him and then going whatever happens, I'm going out on my shield, but not doing it recklessly, going out there and fighting him. Not a lot of people do that, and Rob did that. And I was watching that when at the time I wasn't working with him, and he was very well coached at that point. He was with Henry, with TriStar. They were.
Was in the UFC, right?
He was in the UFC. He'd been winning fights in the UFC long before we ever
any association. Yeah.
Any association. I worked with him a little bit, but he was winning fights when he was with Henry and when he was with TriStar, and he was very good. And he fought a killer, and he lost, but the things that I noticed were in the way that he carried himself, in what was his makeup in that fight. Now, he's very critical of himself and of the stuff leading up to the fight. But there was no quit. There was no quit. So sometimes I see, I don't know why I do this to myself. I read the YouTube comments. They're like, Whittaker, you shit. Thompson knocked you out and blah, blah, blah. I fucking hate you. And I'm like, whatever. You know, you don't even know him, you know. And, but it's probably, to me, it was one of the performances that allowed me to see, like what was the thing that was ticking in there, because that thing that he had, he went out on his shield. And then when I see a guy like, he fought Jacare, and Jacare was a very bad day in there against Rob. Probably the worst one of his career. But if Rob has to fight Jacare again, we are under no illusions that that's going to be like such a tough fight. And I saw Jacare as in that fight. I thought, man, it's really, if you have that visceral understanding, like after there was a time at that point, and I don't want to, but there was a time in that fight that Jacare was not going to win that fight, and at no point, zero, no point was there any quit in him. He was like, if I'm going to take my beating, I'm going to take my beating. But and you see people quit, and Jacare had no quit.
Yeah.
And that's probably, because you can win, like I can look good if I win. But to know that you're hurt and that you're not going to win, and there's zero quit in you, like zero. And Jacare had zero quit. And when I see someone like that, I just think that's so massive. And here's the thing, Jacare would cop criticism for that. Rob would cop criticism for the Stephen Thompson fight. And I think, but people are missing the fact that even, let's say they prepared, everything was right, they just matched up on that day with another killer. But there's so many positives from that as well, you know what I mean? And so listening to the criticism is like...
Yeah, but Fab, you know, it's an interesting thing, because as you say that, I mean, you're basically saying, and this is I've got this thing about, like, you know, you've got me on here talking about training and that type of thing, and that's my area of expertise. And I've got this thing about, I look at people's training programs and think, are they implementing a high performance training program? So, you know, developing skill gaps, fixing skill gaps, these type of things. And like, you're basically saying that Jacare, he has got the same attributes as Rob. I mean, he's physically talented. There's no quit in that guy. There's probably no quit in Romero. Probably no quit in
100% there's no quit.
Yeah, and Rockhold. I mean, that's not my. But whatever the sport is, at the top level, they're all good. And I just think people probably, you know, and this is, I mean, where I want to talk about this. You know, I probably put more emphasis on, you can put up a program, a performance program, a high performance program in place that is better than other people's. And probably if there's any secret, the rigorousness of your training program to all the people out there is that, like, that's what, you know, maybe Rob's doing more work than other people, why he's winning, you know, through your program. But I mean, they're sort of all the same. And I mean, that's what I value.
You have to stack the chips in your favour.
You do, but I mean, everyone's trying to do that, but everyone's got the same. And like my point before was, in coaching, I mean, you could sit there and say, oh, well, you know, I'm winning all the time, so I'm in a high performance I'm running a high. That's like a false positive though. Like, there are athletes out there that are winning at a high level or performing at a high level, but they might not be in that. They might not be maximising their potential, you know, because no one's facilitating that rigorous training program where they're identifying skill gaps. And I think, you know, I sometimes wonder if you had somebody, like in your program, if you had one of the other fighters, based on what you're doing, you know, would they be the world champion and not Rob? So, I mean, what percentage of it, obviously, you know,
I think Rob's a perfect storm. If we're just talking about Rob, he's a perfect storm in that he's had... We all click as well, and I think that's part of one of the things I've seen at TAFE. Thank you, TAFE, for this. I've understood how important it is to recruit the right people and to have the right people doing the right jobs, and not have... And TAFE doesn't always do this. And so I get to see... Like, say, for example, there's a certain amount of admin you've got to do per day. There's a certain amount of... But you have people doing admin that should be out doing more teaching, and you have people that are doing teaching that should be doing more admin.
Yeah.
You know, and understanding that allows us to recruit, and not recruit different people, but recruit the right person for the right job. So I'm not like...
No, there's nothing... Fab, my point is, again, I'm not there just to say that you're the only person, say, that can do it. I mean, I know you want to play down, but the reality is for people out there that probably want to know, hey, like... Because people can get wrapped up in, like, what exercises do you do with Robert Whittaker and blah, 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 and, so from my end. But, I mean, you will put... This is the mark, I think, of a high-performance program. Once Rob is already there and he's at the top level, you're going to put guys out of your camp in the UFC in the next couple of years. 100%. And that will be a reflection of your high-performance program. The fact that with a certain amount of talent, through a rigorous training program, you can basically put guys into the best, fight competition in the world, and just have them coming through. I probably feel like I like to think that, in our program that I implement something similar where we've got athletes coming out of the rigorousness of our training program and they are, they're fulfilling their potential and they're going on to achieve success based on the fact that, we're putting together this high performance program. And if I can, another example I'd like to give, there's a guy, a weightlifting coach from my way in Cronulla, Coach Peter Appelman. He's got a gym, Shire Strength and Speed. And I mean, that dude is running a high performance program, Fab. Like he's sent kids into college football from our area based on the fact that he's got a process in place that he makes guys very strong. He breaks down the game. He trains those each individual elements of like speed and all the different skills. And he's consistently put guys over into the college football system. And if you get if you get a training program anywhere in the world, you've got one. Like Rob went overseas to America to in that training program, but now he's back in Smeaton Grange, and you've got this pot of fighters coming out of Smeaton Grange. You're obviously doing something right. You know what I'm saying? So, and I just probably my thing that from my perspective, I sort of feel like that's where the opportunity lies for coaches coming through, is that are they false positives, or if you're taking people and you get to work with them and they're coming through and they're achieving these little, like they're going on to national level competition. I mean, obviously that it's a testament to the program these people have got in place to make that happen. And there's so many of those little hotbeds as well. Well, there is, but I mean, what frustrates me, I guess, is when you see athletes that are viewing themselves on, am I good enough to make it? But they may not be. Because that's that Michael Johnson's formula for success, the great 200, 400 metre runner. It comes back to it's natural talent plus opportunity multiplied by hard work equals success. So the natural talent,
I'm a firm believer in that, by the way. Massive.
So then the natural...
You want to hear it again, Dave?
Can I ask a question? I'm just interested, because when you talk, because this is definitely not my field, and I'm 120 kilos and I'm nowhere near being an elite athlete, but
you're very successful in your field.
In different way, and some of the formulas you use in coaching, I use in management and 100%. Strategic planning. The thing is, when you talk about high performance, and it's to both of you, it constantly adjusts, because I'm just worried about some of the viewers might see, there is a formula, but that formula is a very broad formula. What is hard work? And that hard work would be defined by your next fight, by your next game, by that individual skills and how far they've closed a gap on one skill and grew another. So in terms of high performance, it's not you do this, 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 and this, and you get this outcome. It's you do this, this, and this. Then we're going to review everything, and then your benchmark's here now, and then here now. Because isn't it about continuous improvement?
The way I see hard work is consistency. You don't have to train hard on Mondays. You know what I mean? You have to that formula. To me, the way I see that formula. Do you want to repeat it again? Because you're the one that said it.
No,
because I fully believe in it.
So it's natural talent plus opportunity in brackets multiplied by hard work. So just I'll let you get, but just so I guess the viewers can the natural talent's the athlete, what they bring to the table. The opportunity is from my perspective, is the high performance program. So it's Gracie Smeaton Grange.
Or having the opportunity to be near, be in that program, because like you could have
100%.
the
It's
natural
the
talent.
coaching.
Yeah, you could have the natural.
You got to have
talent,
access.
But you live in a town of 3 people, so you don't have the coaches and all of that. So that's opportunity.
That is the opportunity. And then yes, you're right. Like the hard work. I sort of say that's the athlete, and Fab is spot on. The society these days, like people, hard work. Like lots of work's getting done in all CrossFit gyms and all sorts of gyms, like in one workout. And then they just go, that goes away to, I mean, it's not the hard work. The hard work is better to back it up. And actually, even staying disciplined and sometimes not working hard at training, like Fab might say,
That's not Rob's problem. Like, he can do that really well.
No, but you talk about Johnny Lewis used to just, Brian talks about, he used to be coached by Johnny Lewis, the boxing coach, say, you just make guys hit the bag. And guys want to do more. They'd actually get in and fight if they could, which is harder work. But I mean, that the hard work is in the consistency. Is that what you think, Fab? I mean, are you with that? Like, where it's just
absolutely.
backing up day after day?
Absolutely. But I look at hard work as well, can you look yourself in the mirror? That's the big one. Can you understand and objectively assess and critically review your strengths and weaknesses? It's not about
physical work all the time.
Yeah, and it's not just about you going home and wanting to have a beer and a donut, for example. I don't know, I've never had that combination of food, but let's say
fantastic.
it's good.
Yeah. Well, I rate it.
I tell you this, like, it's not about am I a bad person for wanting to have beer and donuts for recess. It's like it's okay to have that, but it's understanding that you want to have that, why you want to have that, how you're going to deal with that. And that's where I think the hard work is, because Rob, Blake that works here, like all those, physically, that they've got it, they can work hard. If you ask Rob to do whatever you ask him to do, like
he'll do it.
He'd be able to do it. Like there's the physical components of the hard work, it's not hard. Like if you wanted to train Rob to bench press 150 kilos within a given time frame, he'll do it.
100%.
That's not the hard work. He can do that. Hard work, the thing is, it's also relative. Because say, for example, if Rob and I run, just quietly, I beat him in a sprint recently. Yeah. But
we've heard this story about
going on forever.
But I think it was about 2 years ago now.
No, hey, I won. But if we were to do repeat efforts of sprints, if I could do 3 and I'm working at my capacity, he'll do 20 and he's probably working at 80%. So it's not indicative of hard work. What is hard work is, what are you going to do next? You finish training, it's now 10 o'clock on a Sunday. What are you going to go and do? Are you going to go and not spend time with your family? So then your wife gets angry at you. So then that affects Monday's session and you haven't spent time with your kids. Or are you going to be disciplined, have your meal, go home, have a nap, go to the movies with your wife and kids, have dinner with your wife and kids, blah, 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 blah. Play some video games, relax, do the stuff you like to do so you come back refreshed on Monday and you were in bed by 11 so that you're ready to go on Monday morning. That's the hard work. Because for athletes, the training, I don't think is the hard work. And that's where people think they get mixed up in it, because they go, man, he came to training and he worked hard. And I think, have you seen him fight? That wasn't hard. It's all relative.
And people are training hard. Like I said, you walk into any gym,
100%.
people are training hard everywhere.
Yeah.
Like it's just I'm 100% with that. And I sort of feel like, I always say now, I'm not interested in emotional outbursts of hard work. And anyone can get themselves up for one session. It's the ability to back it up.
When you're doing 5 a day.
So where does motivation sit?
I think motivation is an interesting thing, and I don't know who it was that said it originally or where I heard it. But there's a difference between like motivation and discipline. Because like this morning, I was talking to someone on the phone, and my motivation sat on speaking to this person, not on coming to work. Do you get what I mean? for whatever the reasons, whether it's monetary, whether it's emotional, financial, psychological, whatever. But the motivation sat somewhere else. But the discipline part of it allows me to sit back and have a big perspective and go, you like driving a car, then you better go to work. Do you know what I mean? So the discipline side of it sits there. Because motivation, again, it's something I think that people look at Rob or Romero or Jonathan Thurston or Greg Inglis or whoever, you know, and they think that this dude is motivated 1,000% of the time. Nah. These guys doubt themselves. These guys feel low. These guys feel like, and it may be sometimes worse for them because they're in the public eye. So there's a relationship, and I don't know what the equation is, but there's a relationship with discipline. It's like, it's okay for you not to be motivated. It's okay for you, and this is why you've got to create the proper environment for this to occur. It's okay for you to come to training and just, if you're doing jiu-jitsu, get tapped by everyone. You know, and that goes back to being able to look yourself in the mirror. Because I've rolled with Rob, and he's had bad days, and I've tapped him, and I can't, like, realistically, dude, if he just said, Fab, you go and stand in that corner and put $500 in my account every week, like, I'd just be sitting against the corner and people go, Fab, what are you doing? And I go, I'm not allowed to move. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no way that could happen. There's no way in a real grappling situation, not even in a competition, just a real grappling situation, that I could even grab his legs if he didn't want me to. But he's not motivated to beat Fab in that particular instance. No, like, he doesn't get off on tapping people at training. That's what. Yeah, like, so again, it's the ability to look yourself in the mirror. It's the ability. He knows who he is, and he knows that he could, like, you know what I mean, like, just literally make me put money in his account every week. You know, there's nothing I could do, and so it doesn't matter to him if he comes to training and feels like shit, and 10 people tap him. But for you to have that, you got to be really in check with your ego, and it goes back to his strengths. But my relationship between motivation and discipline, I think, for me, is very important. I would rather, as if there's days that you wouldn't rather stay at home with your wife and your beautiful 3 little boys and go to the beach with them and this and that, and then you go, no, but I've got to go to work. You know what I mean? I've got to go to work, and that's that. Sometimes I look at, you know, people when they make that comment, and again, getting to the definitions of you know, motivation, discipline, that type of thing, but is you see someone running every morning and you say, wow, they're so disciplined, 100%. But are they they might like it. They might just like it, and then the so they are undisciplined. Totally yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that's not. They're just doing something that they, you know, I mean, that they just... Yeah, that's another flip side. Yeah, it's just that, I mean, they may not be that disciplined. They might be doing it because it gives them something. They may be motivated to do it because, you know, it gives them a feeling of, hey, they get that endorphin response and they like going for a run. So in actual fact that, you know, it's if they're not relying on, for you it might be, for, you know, doing something might be, you know, but I think discipline is actually... you know, doing something that, you know, you innately don't like to do it, but you do it anyway because you know that you need 100%. To, you know, you need to go to work to get paid, to pay for the car, to support the family. Like, you have 100%. You know, so I think that's the thing. How I say, like, the motivation and discipline. I think, like, people are like exactly what Justin said. People are going backwards and forwards, and that. Well, they might say to me, "You're really disciplined because you get on the mats 5-6 days a week." And I think, if I don't get on the mats 5 or 6 days a week, I want to put a gun in my mouth. So it's not hard for me. That's not hard. What's hard for me sometimes is, like, to get up and do some admin or 100%. That's hard for me. That's when that's what I define as discipline. Again, I'm with Fab where I don't think it's, you know, you look at athletes and say they're such a disciplined athlete. I mean, well, you know, the discipline's probably just more in the, you know, in some of the stuff like just doing the things away from training, but not necessarily the hard work at training, Fab? Like, not say that the hard work. Dude, I'll tell you this, when we're at the back sometimes and the fight's about to happen, and Rob, or not just Rob, like Jacob or David or Izzy or any of those boys that fight, and I'm at the back, I don't fight. I can't fight. And I think, like, if I'm at the back and they said to me that the other guy got injured and doesn't want to fight, I am like, good, excellent. And I'm not even the one fighting. Like, I don't even want to see them fight. And I know that if you came out the back and said to Rob, I don't know if he was going to fight Rockhold, like when he didn't get to fight Rockhold now in February, not because he thinks Rockhold's an easy fight by no stretch of imagination, because he thinks he's going to fight Rockhold, because he knows Rockhold's a tough fight. He was crushed. And I would do everything I could to avoid fighting Rockhold. I would do everything I could to avoid making him angry. I wouldn't even want to have a heated debate with him, and that, again, people go, he's disciplined, because even though he's scared, he still gets in there. And I think, like, he's doing something uncomfortable, but it's no different. It would probably be a worse response if he had to do your job. Rob would just crumble. He wouldn't be able to do his job. Probably the same as if you had to fight Romero. You know what I mean? He got in there throwing those big right hands of yours.
Yeah.
That made you famous.
We joke about it and say that, like, I like training. I like to train. Like, I like going out to run the sandhills. And I remember early on, a few years back, I remember saying I was walking down the sandhills with Rob once, and I said to him, what part of your training do you enjoy the most, Rob, do you reckon? And he goes, I don't particularly like anything really. But I have to say sparring, because I just like to fight. I think for Rob, he knows that he needs to train, needs to come to the gym. He needs to hit the sessions with Fab. He needs to do the flexibility work to enable him to fight better, or to fight at his potential. But I mean, so like, he is a different beast, and there's maybe, I don't know what percentage of the population, there that he lives for, he lives for to get in the cage, or they even other sports out, and fighting is a hard one compared to other sports, because we had this conversation.
We were talking to Cody last time, so Cody Walker was on the podcast, and he was talking about how much he loves to play footy, like he just loves to play.
Yeah,
and he's not a big guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's not a guy, like, he's not tiny.
Loves to compete.
Yeah, he's probably our size, like different build kind of thing, but he's probably like us, and he just loves to play. And like he the way he talks about playing football is like when he was a little kid, and he's saying he used to run out in the cold with bare feet just to kick the footy around. And like, he loves to play football, and Rob loves to fight. And I think the discipline for them comes into maybe going to training, doing the stuff they don't like to do, eating correctly. Whereas for you, that's easy. The training part is easy. The eating right is easy. The getting up in the morning is easy. But you might not have, their love for it and their ability for it. Yeah, and I'm not just talking you.
This is the interesting thing, because I sort of think with social media now, there's all these trainers. I mean, like, I'm included. I'm out there putting my stuff on social media, but it's like, why can't I'm in my gym doing a handstand push-up, and Rob can't do a handstand push-up, but it doesn't make me better than Rob. And it's just like, so there's trainers out there that are like, though they should be able to do this X, Y, and Z in the gym. And it's like, well, the first problem with that is, like, my dad said that, I remember a particular story told where he sat down with his group of players in an NRL team, and that by and large, the main motivator why they wanted to play was for the competition. They wanted to compete. So what you just said there about Cody is that he wants to play. He thrives on the competition. Rob thrives on being in the cage, on the competition of fighting. The good ones so you can come in there as a trainer. Like when I first started training Rob, I had these envisioned in my mind what I was going to do with Rob, or what he needed to do to progress. But then when I got to know him, and as you think, well, that's, there's certain things you may not be able to do that you would like in the gym, because their motivation isn't to be a gym junkie. It's not to hit these things in the gym. They're not motivated to do a handstand push-up. So look, if you can get there by due course, so I think there's a certain amount of, like, say, physical standards that you should just meet by doing correct programming in the gym, by selecting the correct exercise, implementing it at the correct sets and reps. So there's a certain amount that you should be able to achieve just by implementing the process correctly. But you know, they're not. I mean, it's just a different. I mean, a trainer's got to get their head around the fact that, like, Rob is not in there getting off on what we get off on in the gym, you know. So, and I mean, like, you can sit there and say, oh, yeah, but nothing. I mean, he, you know, like we speak about, Rob would be motivated to, you know, like, to hit that session, or, you know, doing extras on this. But, you know, we spoke about, like, you know, Rob being able to go home and see his family and stuff like that. I mean, at what point, you know, like, you've just got to have an understanding of like that, the person you're working with in their sport, and saying, okay, well, you know, they're just going to be different to you. They're not the average person that comes in as a gym member. And you know, I've had to adjust my, I guess, skill set around Rob, not get Rob to adjust around my training.
That's something you speak about when you talk about when teaching becomes oppressive.
Yep.
Like, coaching becomes oppressive as well. And understanding the motivations and how they are, like, and understanding, because we have these conversations, you know, or Alex might ring me and go, you know, Rob took a day off today, and Alex is 100% right? But Alex is another guy that, like his back could be broken, do you know what I mean? And he's still going to, like, crawl onto the mats, you know what I mean? And you're like, no, dude, you have to take the day off, you have to think, and he's a workaholic. But, and he was a pro fighter as well, had like 15, 20 fights, but, like, he's not Rob, and he wasn't Rob, and that he is someone that's different. I look at, as well as coaching, we had, again, Anthony Seibold on recently. We were able to really delve into that character, and he was talking about, he gets up at 4:30 in the morning and goes home at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night every day. And the day that we had the podcast, yeah, we were talking, and he goes to me, I've been up since 1:30 in the morning, because his mind was ticking over coaching stuff. And he goes, and I realised, okay, I'm not going to be able to sleep. So he got up and went to work. Now, like, we can debate whether or not there's a yin-yang balance in his life and whether or not that's healthy. Doesn't matter. But, like, if you're another coach, not even an NRL coach, any other coach, or you're a manager, or you're in business, understand that at the top end, that's the sociopaths you're dealing with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Guys that wake up at 1:30 in the morning and go, oh, it's on, I'm working. You know what I mean?
So when you talk about the psychology, and, like, that was, like, at the start, like, sports psychology and all that sort of stuff, where does the love and the passion fits into the psychology, and when does it become a job? Because I remember, like, you know, the only sport I ever did, you know, was a really young kid, but it gets to that point where it's sort of like, I don't love this anymore because it's become a profession. And that happened to me with music. What's that psychology, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, but there's something you love doing.
Yeah.
Which is what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Because you could go and do something else and probably earn more money, for sure. But you love being in this role in Aboriginal education. You love doing what you're doing. I'm not trying to speak for you.
Yeah,
I mean, correct
100%.
me if I'm wrong. And I think that oozes out of you. And there's a reason why we're doing what we're doing right now. And I think that there's some special people, not even special, they're not special, that's just what they love to do. I think Rob loves to fight. Your brother loved playing football, and he loved, like, you know what I mean?
I think anyone that you know, just on that, I think to be unique, I think there needs to be, I mean, I think there's got to be this innate love for what you're doing to almost do the work required to be better than most other people.
Even if you don't,
because you love what you do, obviously. Like, that's your...
Yeah, well, I mean,
passion,
if you just... Even if without thinking about it, if I just reflect and think, why was I back training those... You know, when I was 18, I wasn't strategically doing that. Think, I might get to train Robert Whittaker one day. Robert Whittaker wasn't even born back then. But no, I wasn't. I mean, I wasn't even thinking about that. But you reflect and you go, well, you're 18 years on. And it's like, well, I've done a lot of coaching, and you know, like, it's because, I mean, I must have this, you know, I do. I've got this innate, you know, love for coaching. Like, even like working with Rob, things that, like, there's one is that you get to work I think everybody, if you've got a skill set, if you can get the opportunity to execute that skill set at the highest level, just for, I guess, for self-efficacy, I think it's something that you want to be able to do, compete at the highest level, like I'm, by working with Rob. But I mean, another one for me is that, the coaching side is that I always think if I can help, from what we do in the gym, extend Rob's career by, say, maybe 2 or 3 years, that could mean 2 fights a year. And, that might be, I don't know, $1 million a fight. You're starting to think, well, that's a motivator for me. Like, I mean, when I listened, I knew the background of Rob, adopting his little, little brother and sister, but I sort of didn't realise that, hey, he sort of wanted to do it. If this is the actual fact, what happened, he wanted to do it, but he wasn't in a position to do it. I don't think financially, maybe, or whatever it might have been. And then he sort of had success in the UFC, and then as soon as he got the money and got himself established, he went through the process and adopted his little brother and sister. Like, that's a beautiful story. And I mean, that's so, for me, I think like that's another reason I think we all as a team buy in well with Rob, because I mean, like, Rob is a good man. I mean, and he's doing a great thing for not only his kids, but his brother and sister by adopting them. And I mean that extending his career, I can help have a big impact on the life of Rob and his family and that as well. It's a motivator for me.
Where I put it as well is like, by all that stuff that you said, I think, when your mind goes to stillness and like you have like a daydream, it's like any relationship. Like, when your mind stills, if you're say you're married, you got a wife, your mind stills, like you're driving along and think. If you're thinking about, I don't know, your wife's sister, you're in trouble. You know what I mean? Like, you need to address that. Like, that has to come natural. Like, all that stuff that you were saying, that has to come natural. Like, so say, for example, for me, I'm sometimes like daydreaming or something, or I'm driving or I'm doing whatever, and my mind goes like what could we be doing? How could we be doing it? Not just Rob, but other guys that I have, like, where could we fit another session in? How could this session be fit in? Like, what are the situations that thing? Like, or I watch hours and hours of tape on the other fighters. Like, hours. I watch probably, on average, I'd say 2 hours a night every night. But, some nights might be 4 and the next day thing. But I'll watch at least 10 to 12 hours of fights. And I start to pick up on the idiosyncrasies of the other fighters. Because at that level, there's no weaknesses. It's just idiosyncrasies. And I start to think...
Can you explain that a bit more? Like what? Like, when you say the...
For example, I noticed that, and I'm not going to put it out there on anyone, but I noticed that people might punch across themselves, and then that their foot doesn't turn on time. And then I'll ring Justin.
That just does my head in.
No, but
can see that.
It's not. I'm not like anyone would be able to do it. But you just have to watch the tape. But then I'll ring Justin Fitzgerald. Yeah, and people get calls off me like I'm like an obsessive ex-girlfriend. So I'll ring Justin and I'll say, so Justin, I was watching blah, blah, blah. But I realise now you're making me think about how much of a pain of a person I must be. Because he's probably playing with his kids or something. And he's trying to keep his own relationship going well with his family. and so he gets a call from me and I'm saying, I was watching this fight and blah, 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 and this and that and the other. And then Justin will say, I haven't seen that, or I have seen that. Because we're all the same, And then he'll say A, B, C, and D. And I'll go, okay, cool. And then we'll talk for a bit, and I'll hang the phone up, and I'll go to try and do something, but it stays in my head. So he might say, well, if you watch Joe Calzaghe, he does that all the time. And so then I've got to go watch this guy's fights. So I'll go watch Calzaghe fight in boxing in a totally different thing. And I'll be like, of course. Then I start to think about this. And then I'll ring somebody else and I'll say, hey, or Justin. I'll say, hey, Justin, what do you think about being able to get him to do this? Is that possible? So it's always in my head. It just happens naturally. It just happens like I can't let it go. And what I noticed with myself as well as a part of self-growth is that whilst that's great for a coach, it's probably not always good in relationships, in other relationships, because I can't let shit go. Do you get what I mean? And I've been able to identify that more and channel that towards fighting, because like if this is here and I want it to be here, I'm like, that would start to bother me, and I'm put it here.
Yeah, but I mean, essentially though, I mean, you're getting to the bottom of a little bit of like what, you know, I think in coaching there's a certain, like if you're happy to say, oh, well, you know, if Rob's not adult enough to do it himself, that's his bad luck. Well, no.
I wouldn't even be able to, like, you know, that's that pen here.
100%. I mean, you're like, no. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the differences. Like, you're getting down to the nitty gritty, I think, of what are the differences that makes, you know, that keeps seeing Rob progress, is that there's just this process in the background. Like, I don't know, I talk about it in fitness a lot. I talk about, you know, just the analogy to martial arts is moving up in belt colours. So, for instance, you know, I would say after 3 months of training in my gym, you've got to be able to look back and you've got to have something to show. What can your body do now that it couldn't do 3 months ago? And if you've got nothing to show for that, you have been exercising, but you may not have been training. This concept between exercising and training.
100%.
So like I always say, like in say my progression. So for instance, if you go from an incline push up to a push up to a dip, that for going from an incline push up to a dip, we might call that going up a belt color, going from a blue belt to a purple belt. Or even, you know, so accumulating stripes. If you progress in the gym, I always say to our kids, you're moving up a couple of stripes now. You've almost gone up a belt color. And I think that's where I've sort of got my, you know, philosophy on training from, is that, you know, in dancing, martial arts, gymnastics, education even, there's levels and there's progression. But traditionally, even like sort of when I grew up training, that information wasn't out there in mainstream, I guess, you know, strength and conditioning about how you progress. We just used to go in the gym and frickin' work hard in the gym, and we sort of got big muscles. But, you know, I think you can do it so much more effectively by thinking, okay, we'll train speed and we get faster now, and train these like a movement-based approach. And as we go along, we should be able to hit and progress as our athletes go through. And I mean, in Fab's program, again, this is what I came back to before, again, about this high performance program, is that I'm sure there are fighters out there just watching the way Fab does things, because this happens in other sports as well, where 6 months goes by, they might have even regressed, because I think there's a threshold. If you're doing, like, you know, I don't know, like maybe one BJJ session a week and one boxing session, there's probably there's a homeostasis amount where it's like you're just maintaining the skills you got. Yeah. Then there's a certain amount of work that's got to be done to actually create enough stimulus to progress. And if you think about Rob,
that's across any component too.
Any component. But I mean, so the first thing, this is Fab's mindset, and probably I think I've got, you know, similar mindset. You're breaking it down into these components, and it's you're almost squirming in your seat if there's an athlete that you've got, and you're thinking they're only doing enough to maintain. They might even be doing it the amount they're doing. It's declining. So, I mean, Fab's sitting there, it would be annoying the shit out of him if he's thinking that he's not getting, that Rob is not getting
not
better.
Just Rob.
You know, so, I mean, yeah, his crew, and I think...
David Francis.
But, like, that's, if you think about, you know, Rob, and you think he goes into a fight, you know, when was his last fight, Fab?
July against Romero.
Yeah, so in July. And so if he fights again in another year's time, you like to think that through the rigorousness of Fab's program, he's gone up a belt colour in boxing. I know there's no belts, but, you know, you go up a belt colour in wrestling, jiu-jitsu, you know, in all those, and even in physically, like in flexibility and in strength. I mean, if he was good back then, like the dude who steps in the cage next time should be better. And that's what... So if this is about training, athletes should get better every year in this high performance sort of process or program, because, I mean, you're breaking the components down, you're training each individually, and they're getting better. But I think a lot of people just dwindle along in their career, and they just play. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they're doing enough to force themselves to get better. Would you agree with that, Fab? Like, I mean, I just think there's a lot of programs out there that just are missing that concept of. That's why I reckon you need to be. Like my vision. Like, I'm from rugby league background, and my dad coached it for a long time, and I've done strength conditioning in rugby league, and I think the future, from half the game is defence. In 10 years' time, I reckon it'll get to the stage where, if I was running a high-performance program for a rugby league team, I'm not, but if I was, I would be having some form of grappling every day. It might just be light stuff, just technique work.
Can I just say something on the rugby league thing with the grappling? A lot of people don't even know what grappling is, and then they'll sit there and they'll go, look, I'm totally against grappling or wrestling in rugby league. But I'll say this, they don't even understand that the moment two people collide, whether it's for a split second or 20 seconds or a minute or 10 minutes, once the collision has finished, like you collide, you stopped. The fight for the dominant position is grappling, whether you like it or not. Do you know what I mean? So you came together, boom, you're now grappling. Now, people go, no, but we can't. It doesn't matter, dude. Like, as soon as we grab each other, as soon as, say, if I grab Justin now and he grabs me, it's on. You're grappling.
And there's unique things. This is what people, they can't get their head around. It's why I think grappling coaches, they would need to work with the rugby league coaches. There's stuff that, say, Fab may not get, from a rugby league perspective, or he may or may not, I'm going to say, or Alex might not get, that the rugby league guy might. So for a unique thing for a rugby league is that when the ball runner runs in, they don't stop and sprawl. They basically keep running and they try to make meters up the ground. So in a wrestle, when someone shoots and goes to make that tackle, they might sprawl their legs back. So that's a unique thing to rugby league. But I mean, it's not even the conversation we're having. It's like, that's what Fab said. When the fact that half the game, even as you're, when Cameron Smith runs the ball, he's always very hard to put down on the ground. He's always standing in tackles and shrugging guys off and manipulating his body position. And it's no secret that those guys have been doing, grappling, since he was a 19-year-old. I think, he first came into the Melbourne Storm sort of program. I think there's a
My understanding is that Cameron Smith can actually grapple. Like say, for example, Jim Dimmick, he's like...
Yeah, beast.
Dude, he's like a proper grappler. He's like a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
And a beast of a guy, yeah.
Under Marcus Neville, and Marcus Neville does not give belts out. Like, he's like a legit grappler. So, Marcus Neville's like I've rolled with him, and I am no measuring stick of grappling success. But if I roll with Marcus, it's like a Harvard professor explaining to a kindergarten kid concepts of mathematics. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's embarrassing. And so Jim Dimmick's a brown belt under Marcus. So that's like proper high level grappling. Yeah.
So I mean, if kids come into your program now in 5 years' time, I still think there's no excuse, knowing what we know now, and there's access to the right coaches, that all your football players don't have purple level grappling skills. I don't think you need to get, because I think there's a bit of a trade-off where if you keep going more and more, it loses its specificity. Yeah. But if you got the purple belt skills,
or even blue belt.
Yeah, good, like I say, a good blue belt skill, blue to purple belt. That, I mean, every contact that you've got. So if you're already taking a guy that's good at rugby league, and you give them that supercharges that guy.
Especially if it's across the field.
Every player in your club has got purple belt skills. I mean, it's the future. I mean, if you look at speed, in our program, we work with an Olympic sprint coach, Paul Hallam. Again, if people go in my program for a certain period of time and they hit the sessions, because people are paying me to be there, I can't force them to come to the sessions. But someone like Cass, she plays the Aussie Sevens, and there's a story, I know, people that know me know Cass's story, we speak about it all the time, where she came into Aussie Sevens, she's a netballer, she's been training with me for 5 years, she said, I want to play football one day. Within 6 months, she was playing in the World Series for the Aussie Sevens in Canada, and you can see her stuff on YouTube. But we did this process where we consult with Paul, and my vision is all of our athletes should be able to hit the sprint position they talk about. So there's basically a running technique that most sprinters hit, and there's like hitting these landmarks of body positions. So, at contact, the support leg and the knee of the leg that's pulling through, the knee's just in front of the support knee. At toe off, the front shin is on the same angle as the back thigh. Things like that. That's the sprint position that sprint coach Paul talks about. So my goal is for all of our athletes to run like a sprinter. And if they do, if they've now got purple belt level, grappling skills, and they can run efficiently. And it's not even like, because one of the things I think is important to keep in mind too is someone might say, they hit a 1RM on the bench press or a squat. It's like, what did you the question I always think, what did they sacrifice maybe in their program to hit that 1RM on the bench press? And that might have, so that 1RM might have no relevance. And in fact, it could be counterproductive to their sport if they're not hitting sessions they should be hitting. They're not grappling because they're trying to hit, they've got to make sure they first hit that 1RM. So, you can get wrapped up in hitting these certain things, but this concept...
And you have to know when to apply it, because there are guys in your program that you'd go, well, it's important for him to hit that 1RM because he was physically weak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the 1RM has to get better or not.
Yeah, it has to get back to a certain standard.
Yeah, it has to get to a minimum. And that's what people don't understand. People act like it's either or. Sometimes it's as well as. So there might be a guy that's like physically weak, and then, okay, we've got to get that 1RM higher if that's the measuring stick. But having said that, like, that might not be the problem. Like, Rob's 1RMs, I don't think would be the problem. He's not physically weak.
No, he's not limited by his, you talk about skill gaps, but I always talk about, like, what are limiting factors of performance. Rob's performance in the cage is not limited, by his bench press strength.
Yeah.
It's just not,
And I think,
we still train it, but he's just, that's not a limiting factor. So we're not chasing, we're going to sacrifice time spent doing, say, other areas to drive up this 1RM on the bench press,
And it's like, I think when you look at in business or in corporate world or anything like that, what are the limiting factors to person X's performance? And then I think it could be you have them in the wrong role. You're sending someone to training, but it's not doing anything. That training is not doing anything. That's not what that person's going to do. I see it in TAFE all the time. We have those, I spoke about it before, we have like all these like professional development programs that, and they go do this and do that, and like you can pass it without even, you just went like that. I just go like this until it goes true, false, true, false, true, false, true, false. Never read the questions. I just do this, and then I'll pass. And it might take me 45 minutes to do a 15-minute thing, but it just keeps going back until you get it right. And I'll just do it. I don't even read it. Then I'll go, all you did by doing that was not actually training me. You just took me away from doing productive stuff.
So here's another thing I've heard about: should an athlete or someone who's good at something keep working on that one thing they're good at, or should they diversify their skills? And that's where, like, I think
as well as
or either or. Like, that's an interesting one for me. Like, 'cause I remember, particular people say, "Oh, you're a forward. Keep learning how to run, build strength. Don't worry about overly passing and running super fast or whatever." Like, I'm just wondering, what is, in terms of your idea, what's diversification of someone's skill set?
I think you can go too far. It's a really good question. I think you can go too far and say, worry about all your weaknesses. Like, say like a fighter. If Rob worried about the fact that is Rob a brown belt yet?
In jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if Rob worries about the fact that every time he fights, he's got to get a black belt before he can win a fight against a black belt in jiu-jitsu, he'll psych himself out. So you can't be, good at everything. Say like a surfer, someone might have a real power game, like from a surfing perspective, and someone might be very good at airs. And if you could sort of wreck your own game by going off and just thinking your strength's in power surfing, and then you're going to, everyone else is doing airs though, but hey, that's the value of having a coach, to be honest, that can know to look at your game and say, what does this individual need to do to get better at their particular sport? Because I reckon a lot of time is wasted.
And it might not be on the field. And it might not be in the cage. It might be in that, dude, you don't get to bed on time.
Oh, your relationships.
Yeah.
And Fab's big on this about getting the balance right. I mean, with, and he's, like with helping facilitate Rob being just...
Not just Rob. Like,
yeah, all your crew, I know. Yeah. But and I mean, even your students, I'm sure. I mean, they're going to be better, getting better marks if their things away from TAFE or from uni are on track. So I sort of feel like, just on that, there is a law of diminishing. So, but, I mean, if your question, though, was specifically to sport, there is a law of diminishing returns. And it's like, the higher, and that's what I was saying before with rugby league. If you were to say, once you get to sort of purple belt level skills for grappling, you could argue and say, hey, maybe that time can be better invested in another area rather than, trying to get them to sort of brown belt level.
So maintain. Yeah,
you might maintain that particular areas, but I think you're always assessing to say, okay, just constantly assessing, what is limiting, whatever sort of system or organism it is, like what is limiting its function to perform better? And, that may change over time. So, I sort of think identify your strengths and you're working on those. And if one of those areas away from that is dragging the chain a little bit for your performance, I mean, you've got to get in and fix it up to a certain level. But, even if with athletes, people talk about speed all the time. Like if you're born a 2 out of 10 for speed and you're up against athletes that are a 6 out of 10, for not much work, you can become a 4 out of 10 for speed. So, for instance, if you just hit the sprint position, don't change your fibre type, you just actually change your technique, so it's skill-based, you might, I know it's a gross analogy, but you might double your sprint ability from going to a 2 to a 4 out of 10. Someone who's an 8 out of 10 for speed may have to do a lot of work to get to a 9 out of 10. So they may have areas in their game that you might say, well, they'd be better off focusing on their passing or whatever, say from a rugby league perspective. But I just think, it's just going to be that ability of the coach to assess the individual and their needs. What have I got to do to make this person better?
I think another big point, when you asked that, I think it's a very, very broad question, because I think a big part of it is what point of development are you at? So, for example, if I say to you, I want to play a musical instrument, oh no, I want to play music. That's what we're looking. I want to play music, and you're like, all right, well, let's. And I say, well, what should I focus on? What scales should I focus on, or whatever? And you're like, well, let's see. You play a bunch of different instruments. Which one do you enjoy? Which one are you good at? Can you even hear the beat? Like, do you know what I mean? Like me, they gave me the triangle, but
I played the trombone,
but you
because I couldn't get my lips to do the thing for the trumpet.
No, but all of that's like, you know what I mean. It's the same thing as a sport. It's if you're under 13's football player, 15 years old, 14, 15 years old, and you're saying to me, what area should I work in? What if you're 13, 14, 15 years old and you're saying to me, what area should I work in for my football or whatever? I would say to you, at 15 years old, you're not even fully developed. We don't even know how you're going to be psychologically, how you're going to be physically. We don't know if you're going to be able to, how you're going to react to training. So I would be more interested in you going out there and hitting sessions, enjoying sport, building your skill gaps, like closing skill gaps that you might have, learning, like building skills. So I wouldn't be that interested as a 15-year-old in what you're going to do. And one of the easy tests that I have for that, and I don't remember who it was that told me this, but he goes to me, he was a coach as well, and he said to me, you know what the biggest test for to see the development, like the answer to that is like when you have to start taking yourself to training all the time and your parents don't drive you to training anymore. That's probably the time that you're going to see what that means. You're going to see if the kid's going to go to training, if the kid's not going to go to training. That's
100%. I mean, that's, they become a little bit independent, and then,
But to me, that's the biggest point, and that's when you can start to go, all right, now we're going to, because now
we need to work on this.
Yeah, now that's when I start to actually see your skill gaps, because your skill gaps, while your mum and dad take you and you're, thinking about, because if you're in year 8 or year 9, like you come to training, and then you're thinking about like Pokemons and shit. Like do you know what I mean? Like there's no, like yeah, you can look at some skill gaps and everything, but more importantly, like someone's driving them to training. Like it's not.
Yeah, you're more just participating at that point.
Like yeah, and like I mean, people go, he's an elite level. He played for New South Wales schoolboys at 15, but that's generally got to do a lot more with the talent that you have, and because at 15 you don't, you know what I mean. You can put in effort and all of that. But I want to see your character after you're 18, 19, when you have to drive yourself to training, when all these other factors start to jump in. Because I've got good kids in my gym now that are 14, 15. I want to see them when they're 18.
But I think, Fab, like I probably feel like it's something that I may need to do more. Sometimes I might get frustrated in you're thinking, hey, an athlete, why aren't more people hitting these sessions? Like, I always think, like, you know, when I looked at how hard, you know, like, you know, I look at all the sessions, say you do with your guys, and, you know, we've got a group of athletes in my gym that are working really hard. They're hitting a lot of sessions every week, and you think, why don't more people do that? But the answer may not be, you always in your coaching just keep coming back to, you know, trying to find the thing that's blocking them from wanting to do more sessions, or, you know, and that thing may not be just willingness to do work at home. I think, I mean, Fab is very much, you know, like you're well-rounded there, where you're focusing on, you know, what's happening away from sport that's determining, you know, the success of what's happening at training and in their sporting career.
I was lucky enough to have a head teacher while I was at TAFE. He was a head teacher while I was a student, and he was head teacher when I got employed at TAFE. And in certain areas, he's Dr. Craig Duncan. Shout out Dr. Craig Duncan. So he's got a PhD, and in certain areas of he's very, very successful as a coach. I think he's done work with Australian soccer team or football team, whatever you want to call it, but just like a really clever guy. Like
yeah.
in those fields, in certain fields of sport, very good. And one of the things that always stuck in me that he'd always say, like, whether you're programming like exercise for your mum or you're programming exercise for an athlete, is to find out the why. Like, one of the things he said to me, and it's stuck in me forever, is like, that's cool, you walked into training today. Why did you come in today? Why didn't you come in yesterday? Why didn't you come in next week? And people will say, oh, I just drove past and I saw it, and I saw the sign. And I think, yeah, but that's when I start to delve, because I want to know, like, yeah, I understand you saw the sign because I was the one that paid for it to be put up there. You know what I mean? I want to know why didn't you drive in?
Yeah, 100%. He's seen the sign 1,000 times, yeah.
Yeah. So I think asking the why is a massive thing. And then, yes, I was lucky enough to have that explained. And then I obviously took it in, but I understood that, like, sometimes I'm talking to someone, like just having a normal conversation, and I've known the person and this is, again, goes back to the other thing we we're talking about. It's just how my head works. But I'm talking to the person and I'm like, I've known you for 10 years. Well, I've known you 15 years. And we've never had this kind of conversation. What precipitated this conversation to occur today? Do you know what I mean? And why are we having this conversation today? And that's I think, the things that make me tick over into that realm.
Yeah, and look, just sitting there, I mean, you got to say, I mean, like, if Fab's not asking the why about Rob, I mean, again, and the reality is, like, you're the one asking the whys. I mean, would he be where he is at the moment? I mean, if you're not asking those questions, I mean, it's because that's the thing. Like, I think I've sort of gone through my whole life. You look at world champions, and part of me thinks, and I should know better than a lot of people, just having worked in sports, say, hey, there's no secret. But part of you thinks, are they just actually born with something, or blah, 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 that makes them be able to be the world champion, be able to beat the other guys that are the best in the world. And I mean, like, I honestly, I think at any one given time, that there could be a number of people in a particular sport that could be the best.
In the UFC, the top 20.
Yeah. And whether or not they're doing everything away in their training and in their life to actually, to
stack the chips in their favour.
I think, are they doing that? And I sort of feel like
you can do everything. This is how hard it is. You can do everything right and get clocked and lose.
Yeah, I mean that's what I always say. Like in the lead up to a fight, because again, I say I'm no expert in the fight game or anything like that, and I say, Fab, what do you think? What do you think the chances are 50-50?
But I'll tell you something else. As much as I am the way that I am, and I think the way that I think, but I've got such great people to go and talk to. Like I speak to, and it's a funny. That people say like you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most, and that, and then but then I look at the coaches that I have around me and the people that I can talk to, and I can take if all of that stuff. I think all the stuff that how I am, I think Stu would probably look at me and be like, he's a fucking adorable. You know what I mean? It's a fight, and he's highly intelligent, but the way he sees it is totally different. So if I go to him and I say, blah 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 blah, and I watched 10 hours of video this week, he'd probably be like, what a sad and lonely person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he'll watch he'll watch 20 minutes in that week, but what he's able to extrapolate in those 20 minutes, I could never do. And he's like, I'll ring him as well, and he'll say to me, yeah, well, I see A, B, C, and D, and da da da, and I could never see what he sees. Right, just he's got that much experience. His ability to understand and just extrapolate information from a fight and from certain idiosyncrasies that he knows either viscerally or intellectually. But when he says those things to me, I fully get that he's going to communicate with Rob in a way that I could never communicate with, and I've got to be smart enough to go. They don't need to do the shit that I need to do. Their skill sets are totally different to mine, and value those skill sets. And they communicate at a fight level. You know what I mean? And my job's not to do that. I'm not like a fight coach. And I speak to Alex, and Alex has a different way of viewing stuff. Justin Fitzgerald, we have different ways. Then there's a whole bunch of other coaches that sit outside of that, but they probably sit outside of that.
So with that, where does ego play in a coach's role? Because you're probably managing. As I said, I'm always surprised that you're developing programs for these people that are naturally gifted up there, and then you were saying before, but I can do a handstand, and you can't. How do you keep your ego in check so that you can actually sort of take that advice on when you're working with a group of people who are obviously technically and physically better in general? Just you would have to have an understanding of your own self so you don't portray that, like what you were saying then. It'd be easy for someone to say, oh well, you're wrong.
I wouldn't say it to Stu.
No,
I'd drive home and have a big speech. So I said that to him, but I didn't say anything.
He got that wrong.
But just from my perspective, in the gym, I mean that's I just think that's that critical thinking that we often talk about. If someone's not a critical thinker, and I just think they're going to have a lot of trouble, from a coaching perspective. So you might be a technician and be able to just tell someone how to do a particular action or teach someone how to squat, but I mean. That's one element to say training people in my gym is the technical side, but then I mean getting the best out of someone goes far beyond that, and I sort of feel most coaches will sort of put it's about building up building up the people that's coaching, right? I mean coaching for me is just getting the best out of people, and if it's all about if it's all about yourself, I mean, you're just going to have a lot of trouble trying to fulfill people's potential if you're thinking of it from your own perspective all the time. I think you need to be able to sort of break away from that to even be a chance of sort of, getting the best out of the people you're working with.
Anthony Seibold said that the best leaders, coaches, teachers serve
for
their
the player,
students,
yeah, do it for the players.
as opposed to the other way around. So I think I agree with that, and I think like you have to, and you don't get it right every time, and you mess up a lot. But I think being able to look in the mirror and go, because I'm not perfect, man, and I get it wrong all the time, or I say stuff incorrectly, or I make a judgment call and it's wrong, or I offend someone, or whatever. But it's being able to look in the mirror and go like, man, I was a dickhead that day, or I shouldn't have come out and said that, or whatever. And then I think it's important, again, going back to understanding the why. Like, why is this person here? You've got to click with people. Like, I'm not going to click with every other athlete the same way I click with Rob, and it's got nothing to do with me. It's stuff outside of my control. It might be the fact that there's just the perfect amount of age gap. It's a relationship. In relationships, it's all like that. You might not have the psychological maturity to deal with it if you were the same age. 100% we wouldn't. Don't force stuff. So say, for example, I might get on with Justin really, really well, not so much with Eli, and then you and I have a professional relationship. So I say something to Justin gets it. We don't argue, he just does it. I know that I'm going to have an argument with Eli if I bring it to him. But you and I are professional. So I might sit down with you, not with Justin, because Justin's just going to agree with me because we already agree with things naturally. So I'm going to come to you and I'm going to say to you, hey, listen, this is a problem with Eli, and it's not me dobbing on him. We're just going to come up with something. I have a problem with Eli because he's not doing the best to his potential, not mine. Not I have a personal problem with him. And then we might come up with a solution to deal with that for him.
It's a funny one. Like, say Rob walks into my gym and he has a haircut. Fab will walk in and he's going to make he's going to put him down about his haircut.
I don't like the term put down.
But they'll have a personal joke. And the worst thing that I could do is go, oh, look at that. Hey, Rob, and by the way, and make another joke attacking Rob's appearance. I mean, I don't have that relationship with Rob to do that. And I think that's just what you were speaking about there. I mean, all the coaches have these different sort of relationships. And I think, like, on that, like, even to get, like, so yes, there is my technical knowledge and Fab's technical knowledge, like, in fighting, and then mine's more in the like rehab side of it and the doing his strength work and everything. So, but if I made that joke when Fab made it on the first day, and then I followed up with a joke, I wouldn't even be coaching Rob right now. That's the reality. I mean, like, talk about, like, even getting to implement my skill set. Like, Fab said to me, I sort of said, something about how do you think the training's going with Rob? I was asking Fab how stuff I'm doing with Rob's going. He goes, Justin, if Rob really didn't want to be there, he'd probably just come home and say, he said, training was all right, but I think I'm going to go back there. He would just say that he doesn't want to come back and work with me. And I think that's not just Rob, but this is just any athlete that you're working with. I mean, you've got to be able to find that level with them, and I feel like that's what's really functioning well in Rob's program, is that, he's got those different relationships, and probably everybody sort of knows their role, and it works well together.
It's like, I suppose, look, how do you get the most out of your staff, out of the staff that work with you, I should say? Well, that's a question for you.
I've got a big spear. But like it's. I think we touched on it with Anthony around discretionary effort, like that extra. How do you motivate someone, or if motivate's not the right word, but how do you create a team that is willing to, you have a clear vision. This is what we're trying to achieve. How do you get someone to just do that little bit extra to make sure that it's a success? Because it can be successful, but that doesn't change the experience. Yes, someone studied and they finished, but that's easy. How do you create the whole experience to be amazing? And that's where I think that little percent of effort goes a long way, where someone just being nice, like, oh, how are you today, blah, blah, blah. That takes that little bit of effort that sometimes people forget. So it's sort of like, to me, that's what I constantly look at, is how do we create that little bit more of effort to make sure that something is successful. And that's the hardest part of managing a team. I manage a team of about 20 people. So how do I know each one that I can inspire them to just give me that little % more, just to be courteous? Because they could just sit in their office and, I've done my job today, I've called this person, but no, I want you to go out there and, say hello or just be a presence.
Yeah, I was listening to that, Anthony's podcast, and I forget that maybe it was just he was talking about discretionary effort.
Yeah.
But I mean, and as he was talking about that, again, something my dad's just big on is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I mean, that is just that's just coaching 101. That I think, I think that, technical knowledge.
There are so many smart, good people out there. So many good coaches, like in technical knowledge. Like as far as like, I don't know, grappling or anything like that. Like I said before, in my own gym, I'm probably not even in the top 30. But I
think that would surprise a lot of people. I think they would think that, hey, Fab knows he's going to know all the moves. But, I mean...
I only know some of them, and not even very well.
Footlocks.
But that's what I was saying about ego, like really being that self-awareness where your ego isn't... for you to say that, hey, I'm not the best.
Anyone they'd know pretty quick if they come to the gym. It's not. I think it's not even ego. I think it's just like you. It's just like, how could I say to you? It's not ego, because I think like.
No, but some people don't know. They, we talk about this. One thing worse than not knowing is not knowing that you don't know. Yeah. Like a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, but you only have to like.
But you're the owner, so you're the boss. That's how sometimes mentally, sometimes
from
people...
now on, guys, anyone that goes to Gracie Smith and Grange is not allowed to tap me. Let me win. You have so many good guys that, like, I can't not know unless I'm crazy. I can't not know. Like, I can't tap Alex or I can't tap Rob if they really didn't want to let me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't tap Jacob or David or any of those guys, like if they decided they weren't going to. And then there's like so many guys that roll in the gym, that just roll in the gym, that just work during the day, and they're good grapplers. And I can't do anything. Like it's just the truth. Do you know what I mean? And I think that wrestling and jiu-jitsu and that, like, they're pretty good in the sense that, like, you go, oh, you want to take someone, you want to see if your wrestling works. Well, there you go. Get in the middle of the mats there and see if you can take him down. And you're like, there we go. That was a good test. No, you can't. You couldn't take him down. He took you down 3 times. Guess who won? Or you roll with someone and they tap you 5 times in a 5-minute round, and you're like, thank you, glad we got that discussion out of the way. You know what I mean? That was done. And all of those sports, I think any of those sports, like even running, you race someone and you run a 100-meter race, they beat you by 5 meters, they beat you, my friend, it's over. Like, and it's up to you how you're going to deal with that. It goes back, then you take it like a magnitude and essence type of thing, then you expand that and you go to the octagon in the biggest lights. You fight a guy and he beats you. Like, I'm sure nobody likes it, but what do? Do you sit there and cry about it, or do you get back to training on Monday and you win? A lot of the times it's the fans and that act like it's a massive thing if Rob lost a fight or whatever. Of course it's a massive thing, but he's going to keep training and he's going to fight again. It's like the rest is all bullshit. Like, the rest is, if you want to call it ego or whatever, yeah, but like, I'm under no illusion, Rob's under no illusion that Romero or Rockhold could beat him at any time, or Weidman, or some kid that, if Rob fought some kid that nobody's ever heard of, Rob's going to fight him with the same, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to go, oh, no, this one will be an easy one. Nah. So, I don't know. I think everyone in our group has that ability to understand that you're not special, you're not that good.
No, you're just playing your role within the team.
Yeah, and that's all it is. So I don't think I'm well aware of like what I do. It's like you thinking you're the smartest person in New South Wales because you're the manager of TAFE. You know what I mean?
I know. No.
Mate, I'm sorry to do this to you. I'm sorry to do it to you on a public forum. But it's the same thing. Like but there's people that think they are. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I think one of the things just with that, in terms of, I think if you're a specialist in a particular area, like we talk about, before you got to hammer all your season now, like as a coach, I think you need to have a really well-rounded understanding across all the disciplines. Like I think now, like say like working in Rob's, like relating back to what Rob's doing. Like if I didn't have the expertise, say in injury rehabilitation and strengthening injured tissue, look, my program would look really different to what it would if I have got those sort of skills. So I actually personally find it would be hard. Like I've got a very much if you think about and I know probably Fab does the same thing with his fighters. If you think of the body like a chain and you think about there's thick links and there's weak links in the chain, I strengthen condition to the weakest link in the chain. So that means trying to, fix up the weaker ones, the skinnier links, by increasing the tissue strength of an injured area to make the whole stronger. Because you could, if you don't have that skill set, you could just focus on the thick links in the chain. I'll just keep making them stronger, but the weak link stays, and you might have short-term success with that, and you might be getting stronger in certain areas, but at some point that weakest link breaks. And probably the same, look, if you just had a guy who's a background and he's just a jiu-jitsu expert or whatever the discipline it might be, as maybe as a real super specialist in a particular area, he might not have the perspective to sit back and say, well, you know what, we need to work on these other areas for the greater good of this guy's capacity to fight. So, I mean, that's the way in which, I go about it from a strength and conditioning perspective, is that, look, I studied barbell strength training. I went up and worked with another expert with Peter Upham at Shire Strength and Speed, and I've worked with gymnastics coaches, and I've developed my, those rehab skills, and worked with Olympic sprint coaches and athletics, and we sort of gel it together. And I mean, it's almost like an identical, I guess, looking at what you're doing in your team. I mean, Fab, that's what you've done, isn't it? I mean, you've gone and got the best grappling coaches with Alex, and you've got boxing coaches, kickboxing coaches, and I mean, but at the end of the day, someone needs to pull that all together. And it's so sometimes if you're too much of a specialist,
but I think by its very name and its definition, like a specialist is a specialist, and like my specialization is not in any of those areas. My specialization is in putting together educational programs like with David and whatnot, and so just understanding what are the components that we have to address, you know what I mean? So
when you don't know you're a specialist is probably the problem. You know what I'm saying? Like
yes.
if someone within the team who is a specialist then sort of goes above and beyond a little bit, well then that's just, if I start telling you what Fab should do against Romero on this next fight.
Not Fab, Fab's not fighting. Not Fab.
Sorry.
Leave me out of that.
What Rob should be doing, I mean, that's going to be a problem.
Just, man, because we're gonna end up running out of time, like, because we could talk for hours, could talk all day. Can you just tell us a little bit about who from Live Athletic, because I know you've got a whole bunch of people out there, who should we keep an eye on, what's happening out there?
Geez, I should have brought a list of names here. So you mean from like what the athletes are doing, like so people?
So you got, for example, you got Cassie. She's going to the Commonwealth Games for sevens.
Yes.
Sally Fitzgibbons. Whole bunch of people.
Yeah. So basically, yeah. So Cassie, she's So she's doing very well. She actually just scored 10 tries on the weekend in an Aussie development game they played in the Onkonawa Sevens. So I mean the Aussie Sevens are amazing, sporting team. So they're going to be going for gold at the Commonwealth Games. I'm going up there to watch her play on the Gold Coast, and the day before that, Rob's fighting in the wrestling.
He's wrestling.
Yeah, sorry,
he won't be fighting.
It's okay. Use that term. So yeah, he's in the wrestling up there on the Friday. So that's going to be good. Yeah, I've been working the last 6 months with Sally. So that their season's just about to kick off on the Gold Coast. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch through the year. I mean, and look, we've got another, whole stack of, athletes in the gym that are sort of competing at, state and national level. We've got a few of the girls, like the rugby league girls, Corbin McGregor, she's Jillaroo, Jessica Surgis, she's played, New South Wales, and she's going to be a good one coming through. So that's from the rugby league. There's another good young kid, he's just finished up on the weekend in the Ironman, Jay Furness. He's basically, an up and comer from Cronulla, in the Nutrigrain Ironman series coming through. So he's going to be a good one to watch. And I just really look forward.
So I just want to give Justin a little bit of credit. If you're anywhere in the Shire, get to go to Live Athletic for his training and his expertise, if you can. There's such a massive talent pool of athletes, and I can't think of anyone off the top of my head that I know, at least not in Sydney, probably, like, off the top of my head, I mean, I'm sure there are, but that have worked with so many athletes of such a high profile, like across so many different disciplines. So it's a very, very well-rounded program.
Yeah, thank you.
And a great opportunity, like just to get down and have a look at some of the people that he was talking about, like that, and just seeing the training that they do and the programs that Justin has put together. I think it's just a magnificent program. I just really think it's an awesome opportunity for anyone.
Can I just give a quick shout out? There's a kid, Jack Hornery down there, who's he's got his own athletics coaches, but he's just run the 100. He's 14 years old, turning 15 this year. He's got nationals coming up soon. He ran 10.96.
Ran 10.96 as a 14-year-old.
Yeah, so like there's that he's going to be one to.
Sorry, what's the Australian record at 14?
Got no idea. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I mean, I don't even. Yeah, I'm not sure at 14 what it would be, but I mean, he's one that that's going to be an interesting sports science experience. So yeah, that kid can squat 140 kilos.
At 14.
At 14, he's had it on his back, and so I mean, there you go. I mean, like for him, he's not going to be limited by strength. So like, it's an interesting one where like that's going to test all of our skills with his coaches and everything to keep him progressing, because the danger for him is that
because it's not like he's going to be able to squat half a ton.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and I mean,
so what's
and it's a speed sport; it's not a strength sport.
Absolutely, people don't understand that. Yeah,
and so like I mean, that's probably where in our program, like we focus on we strength, and then that gymnastic strength, so strength through range of motion, and then you layer it with flexibility work, and then you layer it with we do like yoga a couple of times a week as well. So, he's on that spectrum of making sure he stays nice and supple, all the athletes got that same. We've got our general sort of like pyramid of training, build the base and just layer it to sort of bring them to their potential. But that's going to be, it's just a matter of deciding how much you want to do in each area. So for him, want to keep him supple and the ability to run quick. So it's an interesting one. He's a kid to watch.
I guess that's us for today, Justin. I know you're extremely busy. Thank you very, very much for the time that you were here. Dave, did you want to?
Yep. Thank you. I love the chat.
No
I think
worries.
I learned a lot more about you and your profession and just the insights of coaching. And I don't know, we've done this is coming up to
this is our fourth
one.
Official one, yeah.
Fourth official one. And just the interplays of our coaching, leadership, teaching, or how all this stuff is intertwined, but sometimes without having these yarns, I've actually never processed it in that way before. So thank you for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. And it's been great having you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Also, we have a local sort of kid, Zach, got a new brand out called Z-Wear. They're going to officially do the launch on the 10th of March. So while this is up, I'll put their website and their Instagram up. But Fab's wearing their T-shirt, so good shout out for a local kid, 12-year-old, sort of trying to do good in the community.
I'd like to thank Zach for the opportunity to do my first modelling job.
Yep.
A lot of people at first didn't feel that I had the bone structure or the
physical frame.
Yeah, the physical frame to do modelling, but obviously they were wrong. And my first ever modelling job. Thank you, Zach. Really appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks. You guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.